Welcome to Ice Time, the Buffalo News Hockey Podcast. I'm Lance Lysowski, joined, of course, by Mike Harrington. Episode 3, Mike, and this one is a doozy. We got a lot to talk about here. Big week for the Sabres, a lot of losing last week, but things got mighty interesting with Lindy Ruff, didn't they?
Well, they did get interesting with Lindy Ruff, but they got interesting with me just trying to get here for this podcast as we're in New York City and a little bit of a trains, planes, and automobiles episode to get here. But we made it. We survived the JFK Air train, and we survived the walk, and we ended up getting unloaded right by Madison Square Garden. So it's never dull in New York City, as you know. It never sleeps here. And yes, Lindy Ruff finally awoke. The vintage Lindy Ruff awoke this week. We've been waiting, and I actually had written in my column in the Buffalo News on Wednesday how it seems like Lindy Ruff has a lot more patience at age 64 than he did at age 44. Well, folks, Lindy Ruff's patience wore out. He gave the Buffalo Sabres 12 games, and who felt the wrath? Mattias Samuelsson and Henri Jokiharju. And the way the game against the Ottawa Senators went, pretty much a stroke of genius.
Yeah, and he was building toward this. He sat Connor Clifton after that ugly loss to the Islanders. Clifton, that's a veteran. That's a guy who has 2 years left on his deal. It's not somebody who's some rental. This is a prominent veteran in the room. So first, he sits Clifton. That's one thing, right? They lose 2-1 in Detroit. Then he sends a message to the group. Okay, hockey is not good enough, is the way that he framed that messaging to the reporters. Fair, right? I mean, you listen to the comments after that loss in Detroit, and the Sabres didn't seem too upset about the way they played. I disagreed, Mike. I know you did with that second period. That was so ugly. And if this team wants to take that next step and be a serious playoff team and be in the race, they can't settle for games like that. So Ruff sends that message, but then he sends an even bigger message and makes what I would think the entire room a little uncomfortable by sitting Henri Jokiharju, who 1 year left on his contract. Okay, that's one thing to set Jokiharju. Granato did that once or twice. But Mattias Samuelsson, an alternate captain who signed a 7-year contract 2 years ago, gets sat. The fans have been calling for it. We had been writing about it. It was time to get Dennis Gilbert into this lineup, to even give Jacob Bryson a chance.
Sure.
They did it. Immediate dividends. This team played its most complete game on Tuesday night against the Ottawa Senators. And yeah, they did it without two very prominent members of their blue line.
Now, let's not just say it's because Samuelsson and Jokiharju
Of course
were there.
not.
The team played very well, but it shook the room. And that's what I even asked Lindy Ruff. I said, how much did you feel like you had to finally jar the room here? And I don't think you jar the room even sitting Jack Quinn the one game. I don't think you jar the room sitting Connor Clifton. You jar the room sitting someone with a letter who has a long-term deal. Whether it's Cousins, whether it's Samuelsson, that jarred the room, really snapped them to attention. Now the test will be, can you continue to play that way? But Samuelsson needs to play better, and I think Lindy was disgusted by the power play goal they gave up in Detroit, where he didn't clear the puck and Luukkonen didn't stop the puck. And it was just time to start paying for mistakes.
Not only did Samuelsson average over 20 minutes ice time per game the last 2 seasons. Remember, Mike, it was only 2 seasons ago when they had 91 points. This team was 33-18-4 with Samuelsson in the lineup. Without him, 9-15-3.
And we constantly quoted those numbers.
Oh, Granato got so sick of it.
Without Samuelsson was the key number of the season almost.
And this team was better last year without Samuelsson in the lineup. Remember, he had the season-ending injury in January. He only played 41 games, so depth has improved. This, in and of itself, Bryson and Gilbert playing and showing that they can hang, they can play Lindy Ruff style is big for this team. It shows they have depth. It gives Ruff confidence that if anyone else struggles, he can sit them and put somebody else in the lineup. That's one thing. I mean, coaches around this league, Mike, they want to sit guys, but sometimes they're afraid to do it because they want to win. They don't want to take somebody out of the lineup who they think, I can't win without him. Now he knows I can win without this guy.
Yeah,
I've got players that I trust.
And he also knows he can do it. Sometimes the GM gets in the way. Lindy's not going to let Kevin Adams get in the way anymore because Kevin Adams is going to be out the door if what we've seen continued here. But you and I talked a lot when Lindy Ruff got hired, and it's hilarious. It brings me back to the days of scratching Thomas Vanek when he had a 40-goal season, of scratching Max Affinagenoff in the playoffs, and even scratching Craig Rivet at the end of his career when he was the captain, which really was a tough thing for Lindy to do because that's what Ted Sater had done to him 20 years previously. So some of the angry Lindy memes you might see out there and the memories of Lindy using the lineup as a weapon really came to the fore here against Ottawa. And it warmed my heart. It just gave me that warm Lindy feeling.
Yeah, in my mind, this goes back to the penalty kill. This, I think, was the primary reason why Samuelsson ends up getting sat. He's already been on the ice for 8 power play goals. In 41 games last year, Mike, he was on the ice for only 15. Like that, it's been a struggle. He's been unable to clear the puck out of the zone. His breakouts haven't been efficient even at even strength. He's not playing with the same physicality we'd seen in the past that had earned him. Yeah, that had earned him that spot on that top pair next to Dahlin. And he's got to be better. And he spoke to reporters after practice on Wednesday, and he owned it. You know, he wasn't expecting to be scratched, which I'm sure I'm sure Lindy liked that part of it, bringing him to the office that the guy thought he was playing that night, and he gets delivered the news. But he owned it. He was one of the first guys on the ice after practice on Wednesday. He's got to be better in almost every area if he wants to get back, if he wants to have a bigger role. You know, he's talked about, you know, averaging about 16 minutes a game is a greater challenge than 20 because you have more time to think if you're only playing 16. And we've seen it. He's been overthinking. He's been second guessing even the most basic decisions with the puck. And if you do that in this league, you're going to eat alive. There's just too much skill. And, you know, the Sabres can't afford that with where they are right now. And message sent, right?
And I've got to play my best defenseman. If my best pair is Dahlin and Byram, I've got to play them. If I've got to put power out there, those are guys who are getting the job done here. And what we've seen against Ottawa, Dennis Gilbert, Jacob Bryson, both got the job done. The team wasn't worse for wear with them. Bryson did a terrific job lugging the puck up the ice. He played 18 minutes. Gilbert was physical. You keep them in the lineup until something bad happens or they lose a couple games. Right now, Samuelsson and Jokiharju, you have to wait.
I like the point that you made, though. They didn't just play as well as they did because they sat 2 players. This was an entire team buying into the fact that they needed to be more connected at 5-on-5. You saw less. They weren't so disjointed in Detroit against the Islanders. If you play that way, you're going to turn the puck over. You're not going to be able to create offensively. And they were aggressive. I mean, Jordan Greenway sets the tone with that hit. The second or third shift of the game, and Kulich goes to hit it, goes to fight him.
What is Brady Kulich doing there? Thank you very much.
So stupid. Yeah. I mean, you just hand this. It was a gift to the Sabres at that point to take the extra penalty. Buffalo scores on the power play. Yeah. And it was funny, though, because then Kulich leaves the bench to the sound of tapping 6. His teammates loved it. I thought it was pretty boneheaded. Then he makes a mistake on Byram's first goal. He doesn't cover him. You know, that you have to beat Ottawa if you want to make the playoffs. The same with Detroit. These are huge games. You know, It may seem like it's only game 13. You know, hey, they can lose. You know, it's only November 5th. No, like, and you've seen a switch with this group, I think, Mike, and the way that they're approaching these games. You know, before it seemed like they were overthinking it. They weren't able to play up to that moment. They played up to the moment in that one. They were blocking shots. They had 3 lines that were really going. And that's a big change from the previous couple of games. They still need more from the forwards. You know, this team's relying too much on Paterka, Thompson, and Tuck. But this is a start, right? And now they have to have some consistency here and repeat that kind of a performance.
They had 20 shots on goal from Paterka, Thompson, and Tuck in this game. You're right. You have to see some more. We saw McLeod get back into the offensive role here in this game. A couple great passes. Byram contributed from the back end. They have to create more depth in scoring and not be a one-line team. But just the intensity and the passion that game was played with is what you need to see all the time. The Sabres don't like the Ottawa Senators, and it's like that from 20 years ago. Lindy Ruff's days, they didn't like the Ottawa Senators either. This group is developing a similar kind of rivalry. But it's all about sustaining us and being consistent. Are we going to see 3-game losing streak, 3-game winning streak, 3-game losing streak? Are we going to ride that roller coaster all year? You cannot do that. You'll end up with 84 points and out of the playoffs.
Perfect segue to our second topic, Tage Thompson. He looks like he did 2 years ago. You know, I think it's easy to lose sight during the course of an 82-game season how injuries can affect a player's performance. Last year, clearly, Tage was not healthy until later. Second half of the season, right? He had the wrist. With as much wear and tear as that guy takes on with the role that he has, how much teams are just physical. They play him physical because that's how you defend against Tage Thompson. It can add up over the course of the year. When he's healthy, though, this is a reminder, Mike, that this is one of the more dynamic players in this league. To be as tall as he is, to be able to stick handle this way, the pass that he makes on Peterka's second power play goal, the attention that he attracts on the ice just creates so much opportunity for his line mates. And with Alex Tuch, JJ Peterka having a top line like that, remember, last season, until that top line, those three were really put together, this team didn't have a top line that Granato trusted. Now they do, and these three are looking really dynamic right now.
When the Florida Panthers were in for their second game, I talked to Paul Maurice and I asked him about Tage Thompson, and he just used the term unicorn. And he said the length of the stick, the length of the reach, you just cannot defend him the way you defend everybody else's number one center. And if you have someone that unique in your lineup, and if he's going to play like a superstar and look like a 50-goal scorer like he looks so far this season, the Sabres are going to have a lot to look forward to here, and they're going to have a chance. You're not going to be able to rely on one line, but Tage Thompson looks dramatically better than last year, and we understand it goes back to that block shot against Boston on the penalty kill in November, and really, he wasn't right until March, it seemed. And this year, he seems exactly like he did 2 years ago, and these opponents right now, they don't know what to do to stop him. He had 11 shots on goal against Ottawa. That's the most for any player in the NHL in any game this season.
He's not being used on the penalty kill, by the way. I'll add that one. Lindy Ruff is not using it.
Thank you.
That is the right decision. No, Mike, when you have it's interesting. I think the rest of this team, I think that McLeod line follows this way, the Krebs line. But if you're Dylan Cousins and you're Jack Quinn and Zach Benson, watch the way that top line is playing right now. They don't get too cute most of the time. There were times in the past, especially 2 years ago when they had Jeff Skinner up there, where they would overpass, they would try to do too much. The turnovers were more prevalent. It really seems like we've seen a maturation here where they're playing a lot more direct. They're willing to use, they've got length, right? When you have Tage Thompson, Alex Tuch with their stick reach and what they can do on the forecheck, it is really difficult for defensemen to handle them. And you're seeing how much extra time they're earning in the offensive zone by just forcing turnovers and working hard to retrieve pucks. And it's, with their speed, their skill, it's really difficult for teams to stop them.
The confidence they're playing with on that line is in direct contrast to the lack of confidence we're seeing from Cousins and Jack Quinn. There was a play against Ottawa where Cousins was going down the middle of the ice and he dumped the puck off to the flank. What are you doing? You're the scorer. You used to score 30 goals in this league. Shoot the puck. But when you have such a crisis of confidence, you suddenly start passing the puck. You give up opportunities. And that's what we're seeing too much of from Dylan Cousins. Jack Quinn has looked a little better in spurts these last couple games, but still not a lot of confidence, not a lot of opportunities. And at some point, you're going to have to make a move with one of these two, or Jack Quinn's going to join us in the press box. Cousins in the press box would be, you think Samuelson was a big deal. Cousins in the press box would be a big deal. But at some point, these guys have to give this team something. And right now, they're just not getting anything.
And based on usage and with the way that the McLeod line is playing right now, they're your second group. They've got to be. In terms of ice time, responsibility, they're just playing better hockey right now. They're defending better. They're creating more. They've got to be on the ice more than the Cousins line until Dylan starts scoring. He needs to go back and look at what he did 2 years ago. So many of his goals were using a shot. Just use it. Don't overpass.
Shoot the puck. It's so simple in this sport. You say it all the time. And you don't want bad shots. The bad shot theory of basketball does apply here. We saw that all the time with Evander Kane. But if you don't shoot at all, you can't score. And right now, Dylan Cousins, he shot a lot early in the season. He's kind of gotten away from that a little bit. I mean, the passing up of opportunities is really alarming to me. They got to get more from him. There's just no other way around saying it.
Getting chances on the power play the last few games, but at even strength, it just hasn't been good enough. Mike, on to our third topic. Goes back to consistency, right? This is a long season. Spoke to Cousins actually before that win over Ottawa. One comment he made was, we just have to stop listening to the noise. That was the issue last season, right? They got off to that slower start. They listened to all the expectations, the talk of playoffs. and it got to them. Well, they can't do that this year. And well, you're in New York. They're going to be playing in Madison Square Garden on Thursday night against the Rangers. Pretty good hockey team last I checked. But they've got two very winnable games here. On Saturday against the Calgary Flames at home, and then on Monday, 2 matinees. Montreal Canadiens are in town, Mike, on Monday. You got to beat the Canadiens. They are very, very bad hockey team. Worst team in the league, in my opinion.
People have to realize that it doesn't matter if you're watching this or listening to this after the result of the New York game. Here's some numbers before the New York game to show you the abject panic around town about the Sabres and how a little misguided it can be. They were in a rough spot going into the Ottawa game. If they had lost that game, there was a scenario where they could have come out of the night 32nd in the league. San Jose did win over Columbus in overtime. Other things needed to happen. They could have fallen into 32nd place. Now, that would have obviously been a crisis. They could have gotten as high as like 20th or whatever. It's so tight. But going into New York, all the problems of the Sabres this year, do people know they're 2 points out of the last wild card? Do people know they're 3 points out of third place in the Atlantic Division?
Which is remarkable when you consider that statistically in a lot of areas, they're not as good as they were last year. And it's very interesting, though. But if you ignore, and this is very difficult to say, if you ignore some of the basic stats and you just use the eye test with this team, it is a better team. The roster is better.
Absolutely.
They are better prepared to actually win games like the one that they won on Tuesday night. When you have guys like Zucker and McLeod.
They play with an actual structure.
Yes.
We had no sight of any structure, especially defensively under Don Granato. They actually play with a plan defensively under Lindy Ruff. They actually, once in a while, even execute it. And they look better. They're more physical. They have more depth among the forwards, even with the struggles of Cousins and Quinn. And right now they got to figure out Samuelson, but it looks like a much better team. It's not by the numbers. The specialty team's really killing them. All the power plays starting to figure it out now. But the biggest thing I could say to people is, far be it for me to be any voice of reason here. People, 69 games left heading into New York. 68 games left heading into Calgary. You cannot make the playoffs realistically in November. You can knock yourself out of the playoffs in November. Just keep getting points. Keep piling up some points here. There's a lot of winnable games coming up after New York. There's a West Coast trip. Keep piling up points. You just stay in the mix. There are 2 points out of the last wild card going into Madison Square Garden.
Aside from the drought, of course, I think with fans, the maddening part of this team is so many people see what this group can do when they're playing the right way. We saw they can beat good teams, and that was the case last year, right? I mean, if they don't have bad first periods and the power play could actually score every once in a while, they'd be sitting very differently at the end of the season. Don Granato may still be the coach. Who knows how that would have fallen? There's talent on this team. They can win games. You look across the league, some of the teams that make the playoffs and just squeak in, the Sabres are better than that. And that's why the fan base, they're going to react the way that they do. They're going to ride that roller coaster, that emotional roller coaster. And I've heard people refer to it as Bills brain because it's like every Bills game, it's the NFL season. Everyone matters. And I understand that because there's a lot fewer of them, right? So in this scenario,
there's 82 of these.
Exactly. But even as media, it's tough because you're right. You look at the numbers, still 4-7-1 going to that game Tuesday. You're almost
not good.
Almost in the basement. You got to approach it a little differently. It is a bigger deal at that point. So they got to get the special teams playing the way that they did Tuesday. There's no doubt about it. This team is going to give itself a chance if its penalty kill returns to form. Remember, it was the top half of the league last year.
Right.
And they got to get the power play going. That top unit looks very good right now. Jason Zucker has been quite the addition. He's been a nice complement to the other skill on that group. But that second group, Mike, they got to figure something out. They're a mess right now.
Alex it's a shame has to be furious to be on that second
because he's good on the power play.
You're
he's so good for them 2 years ago. Yeah, you put him down by the goal line. He could do. Yeah. He can create a lot of chances for you. They're just not even able to get him the puck because of turnovers, failed entries. So another point of emphasis, I'm sure, from Lindy Ruff is to get that group sort of figured out. Our last topic, Mike. Yuri Kulich, no longer on the Sabres roster. He will be playing with the Rochester Americans a few hours after we're recording this podcast, actually. They are in Cleveland. I think that he was actually very good compared to, 1 goal in 8 games isn't going to get you a longer stay in the NHL. If he had 5 goals, he'd still be on this team, I believe. But
Yes.
you're not producing. Yeah, it's not going to get you. It's not going to get you in this lineup, especially with Zach Benson around. So he's going to get back onto a top power play unit. He's going to be playing 20 minutes a game, killing penalties. Mike, this is the right move in my opinion, don't you think?
Yeah, it probably is. And the other reason that I like the move is the Amerks are scoring goals. The Amerks have played really well. Their offense is rolling. Consta Hellenius looks terrific down there. Get Yuri Kulich in that lineup too and really get that offense rolling. It is an interesting dilemma, though, Lance, when you think about it. What would they have done if Yuri Kulich had 5 or 6 goals right now?
It's an interesting question.
It sure is, because
it's
you
very
couldn't
interesting.
send him down then.
No, and your options with Benson are limited because you're not sending him back to junior, and he can't go to Rochester unless it's on a conditioning assignment. That's the situation that they created by keeping Benson last season, which is fine. He played well in a lot of areas, but he's got to start producing to hold off the league.
Yeah, and Lindy also made the point, and Seth Appert has made this point too. You have to learn how to beat NHL goaltenders. Yuri Kulich has a great shot, but NHL goaltenders are much better than AHL goaltenders. You have to get them moving. You have to be more refined with your shot, and you're just really not going to blow the puck through guys very often. It happened to Linus Ullmark Tuesday night a couple times, but for the most part, it's more difficult to score an NHL goaltender, and that's an adjustment that people forget when a scorer comes up from the AHL, how different it is just to put the puck in the net past some of these star goaltenders, and that's something Kulich has to get better at also. But you saw some things you liked. There were some moments there, bad changes, and he was a little clueless at times in the defensive zone, but some of that gets worked out. You're right. He scored 1 goal. Let him go back. Let him play 20 minutes a game. Let him play special teams. Let him score goals, get a lot of confidence in that area. They didn't have to make a decision. He didn't force the decision on them. And it's the right move at this time because you have to get Zach Benson in the lineup, and you got nowhere else to put Zach Benson. Maybe you would have sent Zach Benson to Rochester and kept Yuri Kulich if you could do that, but the rules preclude you from doing that because he's still 19 years old. So you're not sending him back to junior, so you got stuck. You got to do what you got to do.
This team was able to be patient with J.J. Peterka and Jack Quinn 2 years ago. They had their roster spots. The expectations were where they didn't have to win right away, okay? Times have changed. The situation has changed. Lindy Ruff needs this team to win. Kevin Adams needs this team to win. Kevin Adams needs this team to win.
Kevin Adams needs this team to win. Lindy Ruff doesn't.
Well,
He's only got a 2-year deal anyway.
Well, Lindy Ruff wants this team to win. That man hates losing. And he just seethes after each loss, and I don't blame him. But
he wants the team to win. Kevin Adams needs the team to win.
It will be interesting, though. Zach Benson needs to start producing. Played around 10 minutes, first game back in the lineup on Tuesday. I'm not reading into that. Let's see him start to play his game. I question whether he's really a fit next to Cousins and Quinn. We'll see about that. Where does Zach Benson really fit the best in this lineup? He's on that second power play unit. He's going to have to start producing there, too. So, very interesting situation to monitor. The Amerks, like you mentioned, Mike, although Noah Ostlund has an injury, team in Rochester has the potential to be very good if they get some goaltending, which they don't currently have outside of Michael Hauser.
Yeah, Michael Hauser is more reliable than Felix Sandstrom, which is no shock based on what we saw from Sandstrom in the preseason. But the biggest thing I'm watching at the Amerks now, you're going to watch how Kulich develops, but Hellenius looks great.
He does.
He looks like a first-round pick, a guy who's going to be in the NHL next year for sure. And, people told us in Vegas they were shocked that he was there for the Sabres to take, and he looks like a great choice. He's playing really well. But Yuri Kulich's continued development in Rochester, a very important story because he's a guy that the Sabres could use this year who could help them this season score goals and win games at the NHL level. He doesn't have a lot left to do at the AHL, frankly. He's proven he can score and compete down there, but he just needs to refine the game a little more before he comes back up here.
Of course. Hey, if they have an injury, he's the first one coming
Sure.
up, especially if it's in a scoring role where he can be on the power play. He's not going to be gone for long. But yes, I think they want to see him avoid that long. Remember last season, he had that long stretch where he didn't score. He didn't have a goal in the playoffs. They just want him to iron out some of the wrinkles in his game. He is on the cusp, as Lindy Ruff put it. We'll see how long he spends with the Amherst and when we see him again, Mike. But you're in New York. You'll be in Philly the week after that. I'll be in California after that trip. The Buffalo News, a reminder, a plug, a shameless plug that we are the only outlet that is at every Sabres road game. We were in Prague. We will go wherever this team goes. We will have you covered every step of the way. We will be recording podcasts while one of us is on the road. Mike's in New York. I'm in Buffalo. We'll be doing the same in a couple of weeks for the California trip. Thank you for listening. This is Ice Time, the Buffalo News Hockey Podcast. You can find us on Apple and Spotify now. Subscribe. Give us a 5-star review. Nothing less than 5 stars, of course. And we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks again.